The smartphone, considered by some to be one of humanity's greatest achievements, considered by others to be one of our biggest distractions. With the rise of social media and just how damn necessary these phones are to our modern lives, it can sometimes feel a little bit fatiguing to use. What if you miss the simplicity of a cell phone with a physical keypad on it, but still need the complexities of a modern smartphone? This is a Xiaomi Quin F22 Pro. It may look like a regular old cell phone, but watch what happens when I turn it on. This smartphone has a fully fledged copy of Android on it and even has a touchscreen, meaning that you pretty much don't miss out on any features that a normal smartphone has. But this begs the question, how useful is this smartphone and what can this phone do that others can't? Let's find out. Let's take a look at the hardware of the F22 Pro, and the first thing you'll notice is that it has buttons, many of them, just like an old cell phone. Sitting above the buttons is a 3.5-inch LCD display, which may sound small, but for a cell phone like this, it's absolutely ginormous, and it's rather tall as well. In fact, it's actually the exact same screen size as the original iPhone. Now typically in a smartphone, you would find a front-facing camera located above the screen, but not on this phone because the front-facing camera on this phone is located in the pound key down here. Interesting placement to say the least. The keys are also backlit, but that is currently not working on my unit. On the right side of the phone, you have a volume rocker. On the left side of the phone, you get nothing but the SIM tray. On the bottom of the phone, you get a USB-C port, very nice. And on the top of the phone, there is an IR blaster of all things, so you can use this as a remote for your TV. And with how long and thin this phone is, it really does feel like a glorified TV remote sometimes. The one downside of this phone is that it doesn't have a headphone jack, which, yeah, kind of limits its usability somewhat, but at least you can adapt it, so yay. I bought this phone off Facebook Marketplace and the software has been replaced with a stock version of Android 12. This was done by the previous owner, of course, with absolutely none of the Xiaomi software intact. But that's kinda how I wanted to use this phone anyway, as more of a stock Android kind of experience. It does take a few apps to help smooth out the experience, but once you got it, it's actually not too bad. So let's have a little play around with this device. This is the Xiaomi Quin F22 Pro. Well, actually, it's the Duo Quin F22 Pro, because this is actually a Japanese model. One of the first things you'll notice with this phone is that it's actually a lot bigger than expected. This is an iPhone 13 mini, and you can see that the F22 Pro is definitely taller than the mini. It's actually just a little bit narrower than the iPhone 13 mini. Height-wise though, one of the closest comparisons I can find is the Samsung Galaxy S8. They're nearly identical height. So any phone around this sort of size is about the same height as the F22 Pro, whilst this one is a lot thinner, which makes this very easy to use one-handed, especially because of this keypad down below, which we'll get into in a moment. Let's turn this phone on. But how do you do that? Well, there's a few buttons you can press. You can press the D-pad, you can press the end call button, which acts as the power button. You can also press this button up here, which I don't know what it does, but this button here is what you actually use to bypass the lock screen without touching the screen. So let's press this button up here, and then we press this button again, and we'll get to our lock screen. As soon as you type in the last digit, you'll immediately be brought right onto the home screen. Now, of course, this isn't the stock home screen. I'm pretty sure the original phone's firmware had a completely different home screen, but this is what I'm running. I'm running Niagara Launcher on this phone. And one of the reasons is that it's, well, relatively simple. It plays okay with the D-pad. For this main screen, you are able to just use the D-pad here. A lot of the controls you can't really get to, like you can't get to that search button. You can get to some of the settings if you press and hold here. You have to scroll all the way down and then you get to this menu on the D-pad. Although that being said, it can still be a little bit jank. I honestly wouldn't exactly recommend this launcher for this phone. I just like it anyway, so whatever. Now typically on this stock setup, I wouldn't have any way of getting into the apps list because you have to touch the letters here to do so. I did, however, find a workaround. I actually bound a button to the star key here when I press and hold. But what happens is it's going to start typing an asterisk into the search. So if I hold, it starts to search and then it goes to the screen. And then I can just start using the D-pad. So it's an interesting little workaround that I've had to do with software, and we'll be getting into all the weird stuff I've had to do in a moment. Now, I'm not sure if this is something that Niagara Launcher just supports, but actually all these apps are tied to a number. So if I want to launch Firefox, I just press 1, and it opens up Firefox. If I want to open the camera, boom, I press 2, and we're in the camera and I can snap a photo just like that. Or if I want to go into settings, I just press 7. Again, I'm not sure if that's something Niagara Launcher natively does, or if this is something that happened with the software that I installed, but either way, I love how this works. Scrolling through Android is okay, it's not entirely intuitive. Like for example, in the settings app, if we get to the bottom, it actually doesn't scroll all the way, despite the fact that you are able to select what's under system. For example, if I go to the bottom, I can use the touchscreen to reveal, oh, there's actually more stuff down here. And if we go in here, we're running Android 12, that just so happens to be what this phone came with. And we can even get into the Easter egg. Like that. There's no way to control this, so you're gonna have to use the touchscreen to get into it. There we go. Android 12, yay! And then we can go back home. Now, by default on Android, this keypad is only just going to act like a keypad. It's just going to be 1 to 0 all the time. So in order to make this keypad actually work like a T9 keyboard that you can type on, you're going to have to install some apps. Now, the app that the previous owner had on here was called Quinboard T9 Settings. This app works pretty well. When you type, everything works about how you'd expect. However, I think there is a better solution. This app doesn't put any extra options on the screen, which kind of became necessary because I wasn't able to backspace or really do anything but type on here. So instead, yep, that's how long it takes me to get into there. It's not a perfect solution, but it works. I actually use an app called Traditional T9, and this gives me a lot more options and I think really makes this phone fully usable with one hand. So what you may notice, if I press this button here, oh, this little menu's popped up. Now, very recently, this UI used to look completely different, but in the last few days, they've actually redesigned this UI and brought it up to the design language of modern Android, and I think this looks fantastic now. The old UI looked pretty damn old, but this is actually really nice. Well, the sun rises here, and now I think it's time to go on the blue sky to do a little bit of texting. So a really good thing about the Traditional T9 app is that it adds this little bar onto the top here, which actually gives you some more options. So one issue before is I just straight up didn't have a backspace key, but if I type some random letters here, you'll see that it gives me an option to just tap backspace up here, and it's just right above the keyboard, so even though it's touching the screen, it's still pretty much with the cluster on the bottom here. I'm pretty sure as well it adds functionality where you can press the back key and it deletes a letter, but the problem with that is that it's, well, as you can see, pretty buggy and gets in the way of Android. One other cool thing this app gives you is an OK button, which acts as an enter key, which, well, this thing doesn't really have either, so very handy. So that's why I like this app. It gives you all this extra functionality. The app also shows you the options too. In order to do a little space, we're gonna have to press 0. To any of the Gen Alphas that are watching this at the moment, this is how you used to type on a phone. I am typing on a, and in order to type a number, we're gonna actually have to hold the number down. 9, yep, and it just pops the number up here. You can just do that with a whole bunch of numbers, just hold them, and then they pop up on the screen. K-E-Y-B-O-A-R-D. And that's how long it takes to type that out. You do not want to be writing any long paragraphs with this thing. And of course, you can use the D-pad here to go in and fix up any of your mistakes. I think this looks okay. We're just going to see if we can post this. Now, the problem is we're in a text field, and I don't really know how to get out. Well, in that case, we have a touchscreen, so I'm just gonna tap up there. It's nice having the touchscreen option. If this thing didn't have a touchscreen running Android, it would kind of be unusable. One problem with using this in Android is that, yes, I'm scrolling perfectly fine, but I can't really get through these without touching the screen. I mean, I can try tabbing to it. Sometimes tabbing changes your menus. Sometimes tabbing just advances you to the next menu. If you ever stuck, just tap the screen and it becomes a normal Android phone. And of course, if you really want, you can just install Gboard and just type up here. If we tap this button down here, we can change our keyboard. Let's do Gboard in case you ever get into a pickle or, yeah, help. Or if you just want to do some swipe typing, or especially if you need special characters, then yeah, Gboard really does come in clutch. And honestly, if you're typing in passwords, you are going to need Gboard. I'm pretty sure you can get special characters too if you press on 0 and then cycle through all of these. That's an option too if you want to type in some special characters on your phone without touching the screen or using Gboard. And to go home, I'm going to press and hold the back button. That is not a standard feature. I'm going to show you how I enable that. So let's go into here. This app here, Button Mapper, I was able to add buttons in here, and then I basically just added every single button. I wouldn't advise trying to remap these number buttons while using traditional T9 because it's just going to break things and it doesn't work very well. I'll show you the mappings that I have done. So on star here, I've made it so that a long press does custom key code 61, which equals the tab key on a keyboard. You will have to look up what all the custom key codes are for Android in order to actually bind them to the buttons down here. And also you are going to have to use ADB on a computer to enable this feature. I'm sure there's a way to root this device and then have it so it just works properly, but I don't know. I'm not an expert. For the pound key, I kept everything the same for single and double tap, but for long press, I actually bound this to be the enter key. That's pretty handy if you want to type something out and then search. You just do it like that. I rebound the long press for back to be home because that was actually pretty necessary, because in order to go home before, I would have had to swipe on the screen using gestures. This key is apparently labeled as the menu key, and I've kept the single tap as default. I've mapped double tap to be last tap and long press to be recent. If I do the long press, huzzah, we are in the switcher and boom, now we're back in a blue sky. We can double tap it and we're right back into here, right back into here. We can long press this again and get into Discord, which I haven't signed into. Oh well. So doing some basic button remapping really helps with the usability of this phone with just using the buttons, and you can do a surprising amount with only the buttons and knowing how to kind of make it work. The simple fact that this thing is a touchscreen honestly saves this device, because if it didn't have it, then it would just be borderline unusable half the time. So at least you got the touchscreen, so you can just treat it like a normal Android phone when things are really just not going right. Cameras. This phone's got some, in some very weird places, but it's got them. Clearly for a phone like this, cameras aren't going to be the main selling feature, but it is handy to have them here. To start off with, the default camera app on whatever version of Android this is just straight up trash. So I replaced it with Gcam Go or whatever it is, and it works a lot better. A full Gcam replacement might be doable as well, but this is just what I was able to get working. Let's take a look at some of the sample photos. Honestly, the camera quality for a phone like this is actually not too bad. I'd say the weirdest thing about the cameras though is the positioning of the front-facing camera in the button. I mean, it works, but also you're likely to smudge it whenever you press the button, and you'll have to hold the phone upside down whenever you take a photo, or else pretty much everyone's just going to be seeing up your nose. That being said, the cameras are still decent enough for what this phone is trying to be. And there's also a possibility that the Gcam app that I'm using, or even the stock camera app that came with this Android install, could be messing up the photos too, because smartphone photos nowadays are mostly dependent on software processing. That's just another factor to consider. Okay, so this phone's unique and novel and all that, but are there any actual use cases for this thing? As a matter of fact, I've actually thought of a few. But to be honest, they're things you can do with pretty much any other smartphone, but they're just a lot cooler to do on the F22 Pro. Since this phone has an IR blaster, you can use this as a TV remote. You can use it to control devices around your house, or you could even be a public nuisance and turn off TVs in public or at school. I totally didn't do that when I was younger with a Galaxy S5 Mini. Another cool thing you can do with this phone is use it as a little MP3 player. Since it's smaller than pretty much any phone on the market at the moment, it actually fits in your pocket pretty damn well, and because it runs full-fledged Android, you can actually use whatever app you want with this. Now granted, this device doesn't have a headphone jack, which is severely disappointing, but you can always use Bluetooth devices with it, or a USB-C to headphone jack adapter. Or you could even use the built-in speaker. Let's hear how that sounds. But while we're on the topic of audio, the number one use case I've had for this phone is using it as a little audio recorder. I've actually been using this phone to record the audio for the facecam parts of my videos, and it's been serving me pretty damn well. Again, you could pretty much use any other smartphone in existence to do this, but there's just something so nice about doing it on the F22 Pro. And then when you're done, you don't even have to plug in any cables or pull out any micro SD cards. You can just wirelessly transfer it to your computer using QuickShare. And QuickShare, honestly, can sometimes be really fast, even rivaling the speeds of using a cable. And in case you didn't know, you can actually download QuickShare for Windows as well, so you can just quote-unquote airdrop between your Android and Windows devices. In fact, I even did exactly this for my Galaxy Note 7 video, which by the way, you should totally watch after you're done with this video. I don't know when you guys are all going to see this clip, but I'm currently recording the intro for the Galaxy Note 7 video. This F22 Pro has been an absolute MVP for this. I'm literally recording straight to it. I'm just using it as a portable audio recorder. This thing is sick. Anyways, enough productivity, let's play some games on this thing. How can it not be a cell phone without a game of Snake on here? Let's go. Oh, touch the screen to begin? Nuh-uh. We can just press that button, and then we can use the D-pad to control Snake. I kind of wish that I could bind the number buttons to control, because that'd be a lot more comfortable, but you know what, this works just fine. Let's go down here. And there's a little bit of haptic feedback when I actually collect the little apples. Ah, damn it. Yeah, this one doesn't control the best. I think it's a little too slow for my liking. Or maybe I just have a severe skill issue, I don't know. Now, honestly, I could spend all day playing this, but because the board is so big, it actually takes quite a while to lose in this game. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go up, and we're going to have a little crash landing into this wall. Let's go. Oh no. But yeah, you get the haptic vibration, kind of like an old phone, and because the motors in here aren't fantastic, it actually really does feel like you're playing on like an old Nokia or something. So of course, we have to play Snake on this phone, because if we didn't, that would just be a war crime. Ah, that Snake game sure was something, wasn't it? But you know what's something else I could really benefit from physical buttons? How about emulators? Oh yeah. Here I have New Super Mario Bros. Running on this Xiaomi Quin F22 Pro, and can I just say, the Nintendo DS has an almost perfect aspect ratio for this. Both screens fit on the display perfectly. There's nothing cut off, it just looks perfect. The only other screen that a DS emulator looks better on is a Surface Duo. And if I press some of the buttons, you'll see that it just works. It just works. Why don't we play a little bit of New Super Mario Bros. As Luigi, of course, because Luigi is better, don't at me. Oh, and in case you're wondering, yes, the touchscreen works. Of course it does. Let's go. Yep, go Ouija. I've mapped A, B, X, Y like this, so you can like run and jump, and this is an insanely competent way to play New Super Mario Bros. Simply due to the fact that you've got physical buttons, it feels like playing on a Nintendo DS. Okay, grab the star coin. Yep, and now we're on the bottom screen, because it does that when you go underground. I've always thought that was pretty cool. Do you know how hard it is to do wall jumps on mobile emulators? Using a touchscreen? Yep, you can just do it, because it almost feels as good as playing on a Nintendo DS, except for the fact that your hands are cramped, but it's still pretty damn easy to control, I'd say. Can we get the one up? Can we get the one up? Oh, so close. We got 8,000. That's the one right below the one up. Hell yeah. Look at Ouija go. if you're looking for a device that can do DS emulation, this is probably one of the smallest ways to comfortably play a Nintendo DS game and actually have it comfortable to use. I always like using New Super Mario Bros. As sort of a benchmark to see how usable a controller is, and this is insanely usable. I like this. Overall, I really like the F22 Pro. As flawed as it is, I just can't help but love it. With how stale the smartphone market has gotten, it's really nice and refreshing to get something as genuinely unique as this guy right here. Of course, with any piece of tech, there are a few downsides. For example, this screen isn't very good. It's a good enough LCD, the colors are okay, but the brightness leaves a lot to be desired. You can't really use this thing outside, and a weird quirk about the screen is that it actually has a little bit of burn-in issues. Even if you haven't been using it for very long, when you switch to another app, you can find remnants of what you were doing just before on there. It's really weird. And also, as cool as having this T9 keyboard is, trying to actually navigate Android with this thing can be a pain. It's really not built for it. But at least you have a touchscreen which mitigates most of that. This thing also doesn't have NFC, so I can't pay with it, which sucks. I would have actually really liked to daily drive this. I can mitigate it using my Galaxy Watch, but I really would have loved to have been able to go up to cashiers and just pay at the counter with this thing. It would have been hilarious, but I can't do that, unfortunately. Another issue as well was that it doesn't have a headphone jack. That really would have made this the ultimate portable little media device, but it just kind of sucks. You can adapt it, but it's just not the same. And another gripe is that I can't get the backlit keys to work on a stock build of Android. I do know of someone who is currently working to port Android 15 onto this thing and get all the keys working, but for now, that's still a work in progress. Maybe an upcoming video. But as flawed as this phone is, I can't help but love the F22 Pro. If you're someone who loves physical buttons, or you need a phone that can help you detox from social media or just phone usage in general, this thing is actually a pretty good contender, especially if you're someone who doesn't mind tinkering around with it a little bit, because this thing is really fun to tinker around with, and I've had an absolute blast using this. My name is Frogfadoc. You can say that however you want, I really don't care. New videos every 2 weeks? Maybe. Consider becoming a channel member like all these people on the screen have. You get some bonus videos, early access to my upcoming videos, custom Discord server roles, and your very own Minecraft server, all rolled into one. Starts at $1 a month. And yeah, that's about it. That's the end of the video. Thanks for watching.